Yo! Welcome back to another episode of Mailbag Monday. I'm your host, Jack, calling in still from Europe, and I am not joined by the big three, by the other two. No dollar bill this morning. Time change, Europe, tough. But just as good, maybe even better, Dr. Matt Odell, the professional PhD in staying humble and stacking sats. And unfortunately, still, we got our best friend Dylan. Always.
I just want to be clear here that I'm not a doctor. I don't have a PhD, and I question if I'm a effective replacement to Dollar Bill. I don't think he can. I think he's my favorite host of the show.
That was
I'm excited to do a rip with him one day.
That was the most humble thing you could have ever replied, reinforcing your expertise. Okay, well, we were all just at two conferences. It felt like I was in Latvia for a fucking decade. We were at two conferences. We were at Nostriga and we were at Baltic Honeybadger, formerly Hodl Hodl. I think we recap the conferences and then maybe touch on a little bit of price action. I will give you guys the diet version dollar bill at the very end. I texted him. He'll text me back his thoughts at some point when he wakes up on the markets, and I'll give you the sun version of dollar bill. But I think we start with Nostriga. Fair game, gentlemen?
Let's do it.
Let's rip it.
Okay. I think the mic is Matt's. What did you think of the conference and the state of Nostr, by the way? And for those listening that don't know what Nostr is, a lot of my childhood buddies who it took me a decade to get into Bitcoin listen to this podcast. Can you please start with what Nostr is, how long it's been in existence, because someone on this podcast doesn't even know the answer to that, and then the conference and what you think.
Well, first of all, just a quick disclaimer. I am still in Riga in Latvia. This is like day 6 of conference for me. So my brain is moving a little bit slowly. So I just want to put that out there. Spoke every day for the last 6 days. And this is my final speaking engagement of the week. But Nostr is this new open protocol that allows interoperable communications between apps. You can have any app can easily communicate with other apps. We're seeing right now we're seeing a lot of usage in Twitter competitors, basically like similar formats to Twitter. We're also seeing things like long form content like Substack competitors. We're seeing things like meetup.com competitors. The possibilities are quite endless because it's an open protocol. So like Bitcoin is an open protocol for money, this is an open protocol for speech and communication. And it's beautiful because they're incredibly complementary with each other. Bitcoin is already integrated. So you are able to send Bitcoin to any of your contacts. You're easily able to link Bitcoin wallets with other apps for payments. In practice, there is an app called Primal. This app, it looks like a Twitter-like interface, and you can literally just one click send Bitcoin to the people that you're connected with, or if you like a post, you can send it. And it's actually got Strike integrated, so it's got like full-fledged Strike Bitcoin wallet integrated into it. It's available on both app stores. It's a little bit of a work in progress still. We've been ironing out the bugs. Primal itself is about a year old. Nostr itself is about 3 years old. The pace of progress is just absolutely astounding. And it's important to realize, like Bitcoin, this is an open protocol. This is an open source protocol. This is a censorship resistant protocol. And as a result, it has no kings or rulers or CEOs. So this has happened pretty much entirely organically. There are hundreds of developers around the world, prolific developers building on this thing without permission. And the cool part is, yes, I mentioned Primal because it's one of the most polished Nostr apps available right now. It's one of the easiest to use apps. But the coolest single thing about Nostr is if Primal does something you don't like, or if Primal shuts down, or if the Primal CEO gets arrested, you can easily just take your private key, just like your Bitcoin private key, and you can put it in any other Nostr app, and you don't lose anything. And right now there's hundreds of Nostr apps available in all states of development, some more polished than others, and you can just easily just move between them.
Yeah. Nostr solves for a central party setting the rules of the way that you communicate information on the web, which people think of maybe Twitter, Facebook, Meta, but really the internet at large is just data between servers. So all of your internet use cases, even the one right now of listening to this podcast, is at the end of the day, a computer has taken this audio and converted it into some digestible data form to string to your phone, however you're listening to this, or your laptop. So it's how can we build a way to pass data on the web without trusting central parties who set the rules, who govern those, who sometimes censor people, who sometimes kick people off, who sometimes go into jail, and then the whole platform goes down, sometimes sell your information. And Nostr is an attempt at solving that problem at large on the web. Pretty cool. What do you think of the conference?
Who, me?
Go, Dylan.
Yeah, Dylan. What do you think of Nostr, and what do you think of the conference? First,
I think this is a leading and loaded question, actually, or at least it's one of those mass questions that right behind it's going to be a ripper of one. So I'm going to go ahead and get in front of it. The conference itself, I actually thought was incredibly interesting. I'm admittedly not the biggest or like most bullish Nostr user or person on the planet Earth. I think a lot of the messaging around the protocol right now feels very, very hyperbolic. And I don't think that the needs for the platform are going to meet the market in a very prominent way anytime soon. And by soon, I mean anything from 1 to 5 years or so. So we'll see.
what does that mean?
Well, just give me 1 second, because I did want to say that the organizers of the conference put in a ton of work putting it together. And for the conference itself, it actually felt like I've gone to, I mean, God, how many Bitcoin conferences have we gone to this year? Like maybe 10, I don't know, 8 or 10. All of that to say, they're starting to feel, you know, a little bit stale to me. And I actually thought Nostriga was an incredibly exciting and sort of different take on you know, blending Bitcoin sort of with this new open protocol for communication. So anyway, I found that to be really exciting. All the new use cases people are working on. It felt like there was actually like vibrant energy in the developer and application community there. And so I did want to say that, but I also did want to get in front of where I know this question was going, which was some of the comments that I was making at the conference, which at this point I still stand by. Happy to be proven wrong.
I feel like,
What were those comments?
yeah, what's happening? I just asked you what you think of Nostr in the conference, and you entered therapy. What happened?
I think that
Do you feel insecure or vulnerable right now?
no, not at all. No, I wanted to get in front of it and say it myself before I don't know, I knew a question was coming about it, and so the question eventually came.
So what issues do you
Well,
think it's not meeting expectations? What expectations?
I don't think I set expectations.
What did you say? You said something about 1 to 5 years.
That I don't think the need for the market is very like immediate right now. I think that the alternatives that exist out in the world work, and they work pretty damn well. And I feel like when people are censored between, because if that's the main argument that we want to make at the moment, I feel like in the streamer community, it's like people get kicked off of Kick and they get kicked off of Twitch, and they just rotate centralized service after centralized service, and it almost invites the idea to create a parallel centralized service just for in case the fact that you get kicked off the other one. But it doesn't seem like to me at least, like I don't think you'll see an astronomical amount of growth in the Nostr space over the next 1 to 5 years, because I don't think that there will be an immediate market need that Nostr fills at the moment?
I mean, first of all, so I looked up some numbers, right? I looked up some numbers after our chat. Nostr was created 3 years ago. Facebook launched in 2004. It took them 6 years to get 500 million users. Twitter launched in 2006. It took them 6 years as well to get 500 million users. Instagram launched in 2010. It took them 5 years to get 500 million users. TikTok launched in 2016, so over a decade after Facebook. It took them 3 years to get 500 million users. Now, Nostr development kind of both moves a little bit slower and faster than the centralized platforms, right? Because you can operate on it without permission, but it also doesn't have like centrally managed solutions. So as different apps are being built, that social graph compounds on each other. If there's one app that's starting to do really well and there's another app that's starting to do really well, they both benefit from each other having new users because the social graph is the same, right? It fixes this problem that you just mentioned of people just hopping between centralized platforms. And when it's rich people, by the way, they don't hop between centralized platforms. Like Kanye bought his own platform. Trump bought his own platform. They go and like buy their own centralized platform, but that doesn't really scale. It just doesn't really fix anything, right? And they don't compound off of each other. You end up in all these different walled gardens and walled silos. But why do I bring up these numbers? I bring up these numbers because this, first and foremost, is a Bitcoin show. The three of us, first and foremost, are Bitcoiners. And what does it mean for Bitcoiners when I think about Nostr? Because I come at it from a Bitcoiner lens. And what it means to me is, Michael Saylor likes to say there's like 100 million Bitcoiners. I think that's overstated. I think that number is probably overstated. And then there's a question of, are you a Bitcoiner if you're not self-custodying yet, right? Like if you're holding an ETF, are you a Bitcoiner? I would say yes. You're probably a Bitcoiner in the large scheme of things. But let's say there's 100 million Bitcoiners or 125 million Bitcoiners right now, 15 years after the project launched. Nostr actually, because it's playing a different game, it's playing a social game where people actually like shit posting and engaging and doing all these different things, could surpass Bitcoin's adoption numbers relatively quickly and then actually jumpstart Bitcoin adoption, like can hypercharge Bitcoin adoption. And one of these things is a lot of people are signing up to Nostr and they're receiving their first time they're ever using Bitcoin. Instead of buying Bitcoin or going out and buying an ETF or something like that, or KYC on exchange, they're literally just sending a post on the internet, RSVPing to a meetup or a conference or a concert or whatever, and then receiving their first Bitcoin, which is a completely different way of getting introduced to Bitcoin.
Well, I couldn't agree with that more. I actually think that that's the most impressive value proposition Nostr has in its current form and function. I don't believe it's talked about nearly enough, and this was part of a talk and a conversation that Jack actually gave while we were there on a panel. But again, I think that for the most part, I agree with everything that you just said. I think that Nostr has a bit of like a branding problem, in my opinion. And I think that it has a little bit of a top of funnel sort of issue. We need more tofu. And I think that Zaps are the best, if not the only way that I see at the moment right now to massively expand that top of funnel. But I noticed that at the conference, not a lot of people made too much of a mention about it. It was a lot of people like talking about the alternative sort of social networks that they were trying to build, except for this one can't control. No one can control the content of your post. So I don't know. For the most part, I agree with you though.
I disagree with how you guys are. I think there's a huge difference between a business and a protocol. So like Bitcoin, Nostr, the internet, these are protocols. And so trying to use KPIs like how many users they have, I think is missing the entire point. Although I appreciate what Matt was trying to do with comparison to TikTok and Facebook. He was delivering an entirely different point. But for you, Dylan, to say like, I think Twitter works great, so I think the demand for Nostr is overstated. Nostr's not a business. It's a protocol which lays foundational rules for how we can communicate on the web. And then theoretically, if those rules are of value for people to subscribe to them and protect them, then people will create interesting use cases like Zaps, like a Twitter clone, like all sorts of things, maybe something to do with activism. In the same way with Bitcoin, in 2013, when I joined Bitcoin and I bought my first Bitcoin, it was merchant adoption. It was online payments. Now it's digital gold, store of value. The point is no one was incorrect though. It's a protocol. It's a clear set of rules. You subscribe to these rules and kind of the value can be perceived depending on the situation and the context. Right. And so I don't agree with like comparing it to a business. It's not a business. And in the same way that if Google were to go down, the internet doesn't go down. When Mt. Gox went down, Bitcoin doesn't go down. And so Nostr is, so I think there will be all sorts of use cases. I agree with you that,
but then compare it to the protocol. Like what is the fundamental question I feel like Nostr is proposing to the world? To me, it's, is free speech as we know it on the internet protected and free? Is it? Does free speech on the internet in its current form and function scale and work, and is that something that we can access? I feel like that's the question it proposes to society, the same way Bitcoin poses, like, is money broken? So is free speech on the internet broken or not?
I mean, I think it is, but I also think that's the wrong way of looking at it, right? So much of the internet right now, so much of our lives, our daily lives, we interact with apps and different companies where we are the product. If you use Twitter, you are the product. They are selling you and your content to advertisers, and that's how they're making money. They're tracking you. They're doing all this different techniques that are very predatory to enable this model. If you use Facebook, you are the product. If you use HSBC, you are the product. But if you use Bitcoin or if you use Nostr, you own yourself. You're not anybody's product. You are simply a user that can then use these protocols to be a client or be a customer of different companies that build on top of them. And that's the fundamental difference. I think people get too caught up in this free speech idea. I mean, free speech is incredibly important. Do not get me wrong, but it's important that my digital identity, my digital self is not owned by anyone except for me, that I don't have to interact with the rest of the world in a permissioned environment that has gatekeepers.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin re-inspired a lot of energy in the internet, in that you can build something useful without control, without needing to control it. I think that's what Satoshi really inspired, is he maybe created the most successful thing ever, and he didn't need to put his name on it. He didn't need to take credit for it. He didn't need to make a lot of money on it, and he didn't need to control it. And I think that if you take that energy and philosophy and bring it back to the internet, and you realize, can we build a way where we can replicate our social environment on the web in Facebook products, or the town square on the web in Twitter and X, or whatever the use case is, without the need for corporation to control. And it's phrased differently through Matt's language is, can you participate in the web without having to ask for permission from someone else? And that's a very powerful fundamental idea. And then how that gets adopted first, like I said, again, Bitcoin arguably had a brand problem when I joined Bitcoin, could still today. The problem is these things are businesses, not corporations. So they don't have a face, they don't have a marketing budget, they don't have a comms department, they don't schedule podcasts, they don't go on CNBC. And so the messaging isn't central. And so that'll always be a protocols issue, right? Like the internet was for child porn, Bitcoin was for drugs and terrorism. Nostr, now you're upset about what people claim it's for, or you think the messaging is incorrect. But that means, in my opinion, it means it's working, because there is no central person to tell you what it's for. But I think it's early. The conference, my takeaway from the conference is it reminded me a lot of early days of Bitcoin, just more of the energy and the technology being used. I used the quote I posted, everyone was looking for the next Michael Jordan on the basketball court, but he was walking up the fairway. And that was Nike talking about Tiger Woods. And I think a lot of people have spent a lot of wasted time and energy looking for the next Bitcoin on various other blockchains and other shitcoin tokens. But the next Bitcoin was walking up the fairway, which I think is Nostr, which is the same energy, the same dynamics, the same technology, the same principles. But it's not, we don't need to reinvent another money. We already solved that problem. It's, can we take a look at the internet and relieve control and the need to ask for permission to interoperate and communicate on the web?
Yeah, I feel like I don't have anything to say about that. That was an incredibly lucid way to describe that, and I agree with most of the points you made, especially around protocol versus business. I mean, that is a fundamentally just like different genre of like art and expression to like argue against. So
I think we could wrap today's Nostr session here, but I think this was a great primer and a great early peek into what is Nostr and what is possible. I want people to realize that it is very early. I hope that over the next few years, we increasingly talk about Nostr on this show, and I'm happy to join you boys for it. Just a quick call of action. A single Nostr app is called Primal. You can download it in the App Store on Android or iPhone. There's also a web client. You can find my profile at primal.net/Odell. You can find Jack's at primal.net/JackMallers. And you can find Dylan's girlfriend at primal.net/Bailey.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So Primal, just to carry this, Primal is a business. It is an app. And what it does is it integrates the Nostr protocol. Similarly, how Google cases is that Nostr allows you to send Bitcoin between clients so that you can create an experience where you're sending money over this protocol in exchange for information or sometimes to tip information. Pretty cool stuff. So you can download this client, you can post information, you can get paid for it if people like it. And if you like someone else's information, you can pay them. It all works natively in the app. It's pretty cool. It's a killer use case. And Dylan's girlfriend gets tons of tips for the really vulnerable and incredible content she posts. She's a budding Nostr superstar. It's incredible. She's great. She's great. Yeah, Dylan. I mean, you gotta mute yourself and congratulate your girlfriend on the achievements so far in this early protocol.
yeah, I mean, I am absolutely like both shocked and astounded and like incredibly proud, I would say, that somehow my girlfriend's become like the talking point of this entirely new open form communication that really I would consider like Nostr, like among the Bitcoiners, probably, the ETF buyers, I feel like aren't necessarily on Nostr, right? So it is like the cypherpunks, early adopters, developers, and then it's my girlfriend who posts about women's reproductive health and her own journey through that cycle, which is refreshing. It's actually like, I think a regression, I call it like a regression towards the means in terms of content, which is that, what makes Twitter, Instagram, or all of these other things so great is that there's such a wide range of content to plug into. And Nostr at times might feel a bit singular, but there are people that we're onboarding that are working on it. She happens to be one of them. And yeah, it's shocking because again, the only other people I know on Nostr that I know personally, again, in my real life are developers, you two, and then my therapist in progress girlfriend. So
has she woken up yet? Does she know that she's a budding superstar?
no, she's in Hawaii, so she's like I think on a 12-hour difference. But I've sent her all this stuff, and I'm sure when she wakes up, she's gonna be like, "What the fuck?"
That's incredible. Shout out Bailey. Do you know her? Is it primal.net/what? Do you know?
Yeah, primal.net/Bailey.
Oh,
yeah, she got a VIP account before I did. So
unbelievable. Okay, great. All right, let's talk some Bitcoin. Shout out to Baltic Honeybadger, one of the longest standing conferences. This is my first time attending. I really enjoyed it. I know what my favorite talk was. It was Sats Flow, in my opinion. I mean, I have a bias, obviously, 1031. Odell's a partner, 1031. They're on the board of Strike, big investor in Strike. But still, nonetheless, I think talking about companies being profitable, running your business on a Bitcoin standard, I have a lot of insights and passion about that. But maybe I'll let you guys, before I hog the mic, I'll let you guys go first. What do you think of the conference?
Well, I mean, I'll just jump in here real quick before Dylan. To me, this is a very special conference because I came here in 2019. It's one of the longest running Bitcoin conferences, and I came here.
Longest running by
Yeah.
definition, I think.
Well, there's one other conference. They go back and forth about who was the longest, but we can give that to them. I think it's extra special for me because literally in 2019, Baltic Honeybadger was the first time I ever was on stage. Up until that point, I was keeping my face private. I was only doing audio only podcasts, and that was my first stage appearance. And it's kind of crazy both how far Bitcoin has come, how far that conference has come, and how far I have personally come in the last 5 years. But the vibes were really high. Riga's a beautiful city. Most people speak English. It's a good vibe.
What made you face reveal?
You know, I have a buddy who likes to say that it's good to lean in and just constantly say yes to opportunities. So I did, and never did I expect what the next 5 years would unfold into.
Oh, sounds like a pretty wise and insightful friend. Hope you keep him around more. No, hodl for me. I was thinking about this yesterday. I thought one of the most endearing things about it felt like the videos of Bitcoin conferences that I used to watch when I was first getting into Bitcoin in 2016, but never had the chance to participate in. And I always wondered what that would feel like, you know, given how much work and progress and people and projects that are built, the amount of signal, I would say, that conference is able to acquire while keeping numbers low, you know, relatively low to like, you know, 600 or 700 people. I think we're there. It felt like, in contrast to, you know, the Bitcoin conference or other sort of larger conferences, like very minimal fat, just like pure signal. Everyone I looked at or had seen, I had heard of or had followed or was curious, you know, in their project or what they were working on. And so in sort of great conferences that exist.
What do you guys think about the Sats Flow keynote?
I can take it. I thought Dylan was about to jump in. I thought it was awesome. I mean, I think it's absolutely insane that the concept of running a profitable business, reducing expenses as much as reasonably possible while maintaining growth, and holding your company's reserves in a hard asset, in this case in Bitcoin. I think we all on this call believe it's the single best way to hold wealth and store wealth over time. Is most capital allocators, there's like trillions of dollars of assets, and don't understand this very basic point. And I think Grant eloquently and in a fun way did, through his presentation, made it like really showed why that is the case.
Yeah. So you got, everyone listening should check it out. These are all on YouTube, right?
Yeah. So on YouTube, you can just search Baltic Honeybadger and all the videos will be there. And you can also search Nostriga and all the Nostr videos are there.
Yeah. So the keynote, it's almost hilariously fundamental and straightforward because it just reintroduces the concept that people should be net producers, meaning like they should give value to society and businesses should be. All of these sound almost too intuitive and straightforward to make any sense. You'd think I'm kidding, but the reality of the world we live in today is that's not the case. Some of the biggest companies in the world remain unprofitable, and some of the biggest companies in the world can't sustain themselves. They rely on the money printer and various other parties to make sure that they can continue to run and operate and be in business. So it's this idea of, if you were to remove fiat and the ability to print money and allocate it to whoever you want, what would the world look like? Would the biggest companies in the world today actually still be able to sustain and survive? How would you run a business if you couldn't rely on a bailout or venture capital funding? You would have to be a net producer. You'd have to produce more than you consume from the world, right? And so it's like reintroducing these ideas that like seem simple, but then are very grounding, because you're like, shit, I live in a world that isn't optimized to make it better. It's optimized to make it worse, right? Think about it. If you are producing more value for the world than you're consuming from the world, that's what we call being profitable. Is that people are paying more for your products than it costs you to create them. That, by definition, is making the world a better place, quite literally, according to the free market. Now, we're incentivizing businesses to not make the world a better place by being allowed to spend more than they make, which is quite literally insane. So one of the core tenets of fix the money, fix the world is, realign these guiding principles, because, businesses in a free market is, the foundation of capitalism and the way we make progress, the way we live and consume goods and services. So, being a profitable business and the fact that Bitcoin so strongly reinforces that, like I can talk about my experience at Strike. I don't want to rant and hog the mic forever, but that's what the keynote is about. And you guys should go look at a lot of the visuals, because it is almost like astounding to like look at some traditional venture, how correlated venture capital, this like Silicon Valley concept, is to interest rates. It's a little nuts, and everyone should go check it out.
Did you see you remember the slide where he pointed out where A16Z was founded, and it was like literally when we went to the zero interest rate environment.
Yeah.
2010.
Yeah. I mean, the concept of I'm going to place 10 bets and hope that one is right. That's like in movies now. It's like, oh, I'm a venture capitalist. I place 10 bets. I hope one is right, and that one pays for the other 9 that lost. So you professionally shoot 10%. That's outrageous performance. That's fucking awful. How is that a profession? It's insane and is obviously not sustainable whatsoever. But that's the type of performance that fiat allows for. It's absurd and it's ridiculous. And it's they call it zero interest rate phenomenon, right? Is what if money was free? Would there be any consequences for ever being wrong? Right? So, I did this at the conference, but so for these gentlemen, I feel bad because they're hearing it for a second time or potentially a 20th time. But, I think it's important. I like the analogy of death and life, of Bitcoin and money, because the only reason I value my life is because I know I'm going to die. Everyone feels that. If I knew I was going to live forever, I'd go to the gym in 10,000 years. I'd find my wife in 10,000 years. I'd have a kid in 10,000 years. I'd get a job in 10,000 years. Why would I ever fucking care? It's the finite promise of my time is what makes it valuable at all. If my time was infinite, it would carry no value to me. So if you take that to money, which, by the way, the baseline of money is energy. So if energy is infinite, and it's impossible to then value, right? Like if there's infinite amounts of dollars, we can't value it in the same way that if you have infinite amount of time. And so then you get a society that's just full of shit. It's impossible to value whether to hire another person, whether to spend another marketing dollar, whether to make another investment, whether to found another business. And so it's Bitcoin's finite promise and scarcity that allows us to actually value money and energy, which changes everything about how you run a company. Because then all of a sudden you say, should I hire 100 more people, or should I just buy Bitcoin? Should I launch a new product line, or should I just buy Bitcoin? Should I take this vacation, or should I buy more Bitcoin? Should I have another child, or should I just buy more Bitcoin? It actually creates an opportunity cost. And at the end of the day, again, money, time and energy in an abstracted form, it's energy opportunity cost, right? Is the work you're going to produce for the world going to be more valuable than saving the work you've already produced? And how efficient of a society is that if we can measure like future work versus work we've already created? No, I should probably save what I have because the work I'm about to produce is going to be a net waste. Versus, no, I should go off and do this work because it's going to be even more valuable than the Bitcoin I hold right now. What if everything anyone did outperformed Bitcoin? And if it didn't outperform Bitcoin, no one would waste their time. What if we lived in that world? Incredible. That's how I run Strike. At Strike, we collect numbers on how Bitcoin does. Bitcoin, 63% on average, year over year, over the last decade. And the only reason I do over the last decade is if you do over the last 15 years, it's an outrageous number. It's like 150 something percent. So at Strike, we go, should we work on this thing? Well, is it going to beat 63% year over year? If not, we're not giving enough value to the world and to society. We might as well save the value we've already created. You know, so we run the entire business on a Bitcoin treasury, and we only make decisions measured against the real opportunity cost, which is now Bitcoin. Versus this, you know, if you live in a fiat world, this is where you see businesses with 50,000 employees, 50,000 product lines, 50,000 things to do. Because if you have extra cash, if you have extra opportunity, what's the cost of trying and failing? Zero. Not 63% year over year. Zero. You can try, fail, do a bunch of shit, have a bunch of employees. You know, all these like millennial or Gen Z employees that film TikToks at these businesses. Here's my day at Facebook. I wake up, I eat donuts, I film myself, I paint my nails, I go home. Well, what's the opportunity cost? If Zuckerberg measured that against Bitcoin, he'd fire the fuck out of these people. So he's better off owning sats. But instead, he's like, well, what's the difference between owning dollars and owning an unproductive human? It's the same, right? I don't know. Talked enough.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I like it. I think the funniest part about the presentation by far is that a lot of the core pillars of it are like shockingly simple. It's like keep your costs low, generate more cash than you spend. And it's like if you were to walk in for a VC interview and say like, oh, hey, you know, this is how I'm going to approach the portfolio companies that I work with. And this is, you know, this is what I'd recommend as a strategy. They would, honest to God, in all likelihood, I think they would tell you to get the fuck out.
Yeah, but like on that point real quick, like this isn't just, we're talking about businesses and corporations, right? Like 1031 invest in businesses. This is how they think businesses should be run. But Bitcoin changes the fabric of society because if Zuckerberg can say, what's the difference between owning dollars on Facebook's balance sheet versus owning, or not owning literally, slave talk, but employing a bunch of unproductive humans that all they do is film themselves getting coffee, painting nails, taking TikToks. If they both are worth and cost the same, then what incentive does a 19-year-old girl graduating from college have to be a productive human? Humans have to beat the opportunity cost of money, of the energy. They're trying to beat the opportunity cost of the dollar, which is zero. So what you have is just a class of unproductive, worthless people that do fuck all, that film TikToks and dance, right? What if every person was measured against Bitcoin? What if in order to be employed and be worthwhile and have a family and be chosen to reproduce with someone else, you had to like produce more value in the world than something that has a real opportunity cost, you know? Like, oh, if you're going to just be a 20-year-old person that films TikToks and paints their nails and gets drunk all day, then you're not ever going to be employed and no one will want to be around you, you know? But the fiat world, that is worth more than Zuckerberg owning dollars, you know? It's like ass backwards incentives. It's absolutely terrible. So that's why also at Strike, we have amazing people. We have far less people because I have no incentive to have 10,000 employees. Absolutely zero incentive to do that. But the people I do have produce an incredible amount of value. You know, it really is night and day. I mean, every business will figure this out eventually, but it goes down fundamentally to, I love the death to life. Like if everyone could live forever, then life would carry no value. The time that you spend would carry very little value. Same thing with the dollars.
Nailed it. It just all comes down to incentives. And so much of this world, we just have broken incentives all around us. And I think, like you like to say all the time, is money is one half of every transaction. And if you have broken incentives at the money layer, it just destroys everything. And what we're seeing right now is this move into a Bitcoinized world, a Bitcoin standard world. And ultimately, every person, every company, every government is going to have to operate this way. And the ones that realize it today, in these early days of the adoption cycle, stand to benefit the most. But I think it's easy to say that humanity will flourish under this environment, regardless of when you start using Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, let's do healthcare. What if when you got sick, we couldn't just print money, distribute all of the costs to the collective populace that holds the money, just to make sure that people feel confident that they're taken care of, right? Like that's how politicians get elected, right? Is they promise healthcare, healthcare, healthcare. If you get sick, if something's wrong, we're going to take care of you. Obviously, nothing's free. They burden the cost of that by printing more money, inflating the currency. Everyone pays for healthcare. What if you couldn't print any money, and if you got sick, you had to pay for it? How many fat people would we have? Real shit. Would you eat that Snickers bar if there was an opportunity cost? No, I'm dead ass. I'm dead ass. Would you care about your health?
No.
What? No to what? You wouldn't eat the Snickers bar. What are you saying no to? I'm asking a question. Dylan.
Shit, I think I froze.
We
What-
hear you.
What did you say no to? Oh, the Snickers bar?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
he was agreeing with you, but it sounded like the opposite.
Oh, it lagged. Yeah, my like this is like fundamentally the point is if you introduce opportunity costs, like why do I focus on relationship and love and I want to work out and stuff? Because I'm gonna die. I don't have forever, right? Like if we don't have forever's amount of money and energy, then you have to take care of yourself. You have to be a productive person. Like the examples are just so plain obvious. Where if you got yourself sick and no one was there to take care of you, you would probably avoid getting sick, right? If you had to be a certain level of productive measured against real opportunity costs, or else you wouldn't be able to get employed and have a relationship and have a meaningful life, you'd probably work on being that productive. I don't know. It's a sobering keynote and it's a sobering concept because once you hear it out loud, you're like, oh, this makes all the sense in the world. But it really goes to show the numbing of the world that you live in today, of that like these concepts aren't intuitive and natural and well understood. It's very frustrating.
Well, I mean, the cool part is it becomes intuitive once you fix the money. Like it's not. I think just Bitcoiners naturally will come to this conclusion as more and more of their liquid net worth is held in Bitcoin, and as they start to see that opportunity cost on a first-hand basis. I mean, it sounds ridiculous when you say we measure our opportunity cost based off of 63% year-over-year returns. But in a Bitcoin world, it's even simpler than that. It's if I spend Bitcoin, am I going to get more Bitcoin out of that?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I mean, by the way, like we're living in a digital gold rush, you know, where the amount of work it took to get 1,000 Bitcoin a decade ago versus the amount of work it takes to get 1,000 Bitcoin today is materially different, right? Like the world requires far more work and literally in proof of work in mining, but also practically in work contributing to society. And so it absolutely favors those that it favors everyone listening to this podcast is that you're living through a digital gold rush. And as time goes on, that's the most difficult part of building a business is like how your performance goes against Bitcoin. It's like you're racing against a fucking stallion, right? It's like an unforgiving stallion you're racing against. And yeah, anyway.
I think that was one of the most fascinating parts of his talk was because you think about it in your head in one way, but seeing it in graph form, like the visualization of what a growing, profitable, dominant business would look like after Bitcoin standard in Bitcoin terms. So if you do Bitcoin denominated cash flow, you actually might make less Bitcoin every year because Bitcoin purchasing power is increasing and it's becoming more difficult for you to have a larger percent of the supply and it requires more work. I like to phrase it, I've historically phrased it, and it was all caps during the 2021 bull market. You will never make more money for your work than you do today. It's the opposite. It's the
Yep.
opposite of the fiat mindset. If I put an hour of work in today, that might be worth 10 hours of work in 10 years, or probably even more than that. That's a very bearish outcome, actually.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, people should, another way of phrasing all of this is that everything gets cheaper in Bitcoin terms too, right? So like you're getting less Bitcoin in return for your work, but you're probably getting more housing in return for your work denominating in Bitcoin as well. Like, right? Like everyone's dream house in 2011 was thousands of Bitcoin. Then some years later, it was hundreds of Bitcoin. Then some years later, it was, dozens of Bitcoin. Now you can get a dream house for, half dozen Bitcoin. And in the future, you'll be able to get a dream house for less than a Bitcoin. Versus obviously the opposite. It's very different. So,
yeah, I mean, I guess what that looks like in practice is you'll always be able to get the same equivalent of house for your current work in a Bitcoin standard world. It's your past work. It's it's your savings that are accruing value, right? While the rest of the world is actually like in a non-manipulated free market, which is kind of crazy because that's the thing that everyone talks about, right? It's cost of living. Cost of living is ridiculous. Kids these days can't afford a house, right? Why are they working? And you end up in a situation where effectively people are incentivized to just slave away their whole lives and accrue no value. And this does the opposite.
yeah. Yes, I agree. Okay. This kind of reminds me, I have how good Bitcoin is as money, the best money in human history. It's funny to even compare it against anything else, including gold. And I am debating Peter Schiff on Bitcoin versus gold this Thursday, actually. I don't know when it comes out or if it's live. Do you know, Dylan?
I believe it's recorded.
So it's not live. It's will be published some later date.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. I'm looking forward to it though. I mean, unfortunately, listen, I know Peter's a troll. His opinions are as close to worthless as it gets when it comes to Bitcoin. And for someone that defends gold as much as he does, he barely even owns any, I think, relative to other assets. So I don't know. For me, I got into Bitcoin 11 years ago at this point. I've always grown up watching these, kind of a childhood dream of mine. But I also am going to have a blast because I don't even know how at this point it's a debate at all. But it kind of reminds me of that.
It won't be a debate on the merits. I just don't see how that's mathematically, numerically.
No, he'll kick and scream. He's old, gray hair, washed up with old money, and I'm young, have outperformed him tremendously over the last decade. His clients are better off my clients. And so on those merits, I don't know how it'll be a debate, but I'm going to enjoy it. Like the 18-year-old version of me is going to really enjoy it. I'm going to take a screenshot, send it to my parents.
I gotta say that I'm pretty excited about it. I will also take a screenshot and send it to my parents. The cool part about this, and the coolest part about this for me is, I think free markets are the way. I think free markets is what leads to human flourishing. And the beautiful aspect of a debate like this is you guys can both have fun with it, and you place your bets on the free market. If you want to hold, all the listeners can too. If you want to hold all your wealth in gold and somehow store the gold bars in your house or something, do that. And if you want to hold it all in Bitcoin, do that. And then we can see how it plays out and see who was right at the end of the day empirically. It'll be very obvious who won that debate in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years.
100%. Bitcoin's undefeated. I think, hold on. I think, because I was looking up some data just to prepare myself. Yeah, from 1980 to the end of the last calendar year. So I can't do 2024 yet. But from 1980 to the end of 2023, if you adjust for inflation. So inflation adjusted return, gold is down 4%. Which, I mean, it's not close. I mean, Bitcoin free market record, it's undefeated. Pound for pound. The 90s bulls. Okay. Well, what else, gentlemen? Maybe that's a good place to wrap it. Mailbag
Sounds
Monday
good to me.
cardio. It's like I feel it in my chest when I go on these rants. It brings all the emotion out of me. Okay.
We love it. We can feel it too.
Yeah, there you go. Well, safe travels, buddy. I hope you get home. You did a great job in Latvia. Talked every single day. Thank you for joining us.
Well, I mean, I have to because I'm trying to outperform 63% year over year with my work. So that's how that results, but I would say once again, thanks for having me guys on again. I always love kicking it with you, both in person and virtual. And I hope there'll be many more.
Thanks for joining us, brother Matt. Get long, get fucking paid.
Peace.